Hi, welcome back. In this video, I'm gonna walk you through the entire drawing process of this realistic raven using charcoal pencils. So let's get started. As always, these are the art supplies I'll be using for this drawing, and you can pause the video right here to note them down. I'm using this 250 GSM paper from my ordinary smooth surface sketchbook, which is available in almost all the art stores or stationeries around the world. So you don't have to use any fancy paper for this specific drawing. And the drawing portion area is 12 x 16 inches. I drew the outline using grid method, and you can find the detailed step-by-step process from making the grid to outlining on my Patreon profile. Link is in the description. As we can see in the reference image that the background is in the gradient form. So I'm firstly scraping my charcoal pencil onto a scraper to convert it into a powder. You all know how much I love experimenting, so I thought of using these dry wipes to add and blend the charcoal. I'm firstly picking up the charcoal by tapping it over the scraper and now rubbing it over the desired portion. While shading the background, most of the powder was falling off from the paper. So I added this chart paper collector at the end of the drawing so that it gathers all the powder in it, which can be used to shade the drawing later on. In this way, we can reuse the powder and reduce the waste. The charcoal layer wasn't turning out as smooth and rich in shade as I wanted. So I'm shifting towards a bigger size fluffy brush and adding a background using circular scribbling motions. But still the charcoal wasn't giving the dark shade, so now I'm using a black pastel chalk and adding a base layer using it till the beak portion. Now blending this layer using the same bigger size fluffy brush and moving my hand in circular motions to achieve a blended look. Keep on picking up the charcoal from the collector and layer it over the areas until it matches with the reference image. As we move towards the upper portion, the background is becoming lighter, so I'm layering less powder to achieve the desired results. I'm scraping the pastel chalk on the edge of the masking tape and collecting the powder in the collector, and then we'll use it to shade the background later on. The lower portion is still looking a bit dull, so I'm directly using a chalk at the bottom and then blending it using my fingers to get a dark shade. After shading, the top portion has started to look a bit patchy, so I'm using a tissue paper to blend this layer thoroughly. I'm going back and forth with my layering and blending until I achieve the desired smooth gradient. And by the way, you can get access to our premium content and support this channel through Patreon. You can sign up through different membership levels and get access to all the outlines and grid references, etc. We have an ever-growing library of hundreds of exclusive and real-time tutorials. And you will also get access to 4 new tutorials every month. You can also post your artworks in our active community of patrons and participate in our weekly critique sessions where I give my honest and positive critiques on your artworks, so you can improve your skills and get better with your drawing. Visit the link in description and become a premium member today. It has always been my goal to provide free tutorials and information on drawing and art related tools to general public. And keeping with that theme, I would like to thank all these incredible individuals who backed our channel on Patreon last month. Their generous support enabled me to produce this free tutorial for all of you guys. Okay, so the background we just added is very fragile and easy to mess up. So to prevent any smudging and spilling of the powder, I've taped down another chart paper over it using my masking tape. And now I'm tearing the chart from the raven portion, and that is how we will conceal the background. To save the outline from smudging, I'm pasting a sheet over it and only exposing the small top portion where I'll be working. Now let's start the shading process, and as always, I'm darkening the outline using my charcoal pencil. Notice that as I move towards the head, I'm changing the direction of these base strokes to mimic a fur tuft. And for the lighter sections above the eye, I'm reducing the size of these strokes as we want this section to look shiny later on. I'm also darkening the outline of the eye so that I can create a proper separation and add the fur strokes easily. Now let's fill this lighter area with fur, and to mimic such a look, I'm adding these curved lines and strokes in random direction. Also notice that I've increased the distance between them to create a required texture. Moving on to the beak, and as we already have separated the dark and light portions, so now I'm adding these horizontal strokes over the darker portions. Also notice that I'm filling some areas thoroughly as they are pitch black in the reference image. And as we move towards the eye, I'm firstly creating a ring by keeping the pressure high on my pencil. And then for the portion under the eye, I'm adding these strokes by flicking my pencil downwards. Make sure to add them side by side here, as we need a denser looking fur texture. Moving on to the iris, and let's shade almost half of it with a pitch black shade just like the reference image. Now adding these teeny tiny strokes all around the iris to mimic small fur. Make sure to keep the tip of the pencil sharp so that you can achieve such thin strokes in less time. Now I'm shading the front portion of the beak with relatively higher pressure, as the beak is open, which is creating a shadow inside it. So to achieve such an effect, I'm firstly darkening the outline using the sharp tip of my pencil, and then increasing the pressure to fill this whole portion with a pitch black base. For the lower portion of the beak, I'm adding these horizontal strokes very carefully by maintaining a variable pressure, just like the way I did for the upper portion. Now as the base in this section is done, let's start adding the highlights. And for that, I'm firstly picking up the excessive graphite from the top right portion of the beak using my Mono 0 eraser. Now let's start adding this lighter texture using a white pastel pencil in the area right above the eye. I'm using back and forth motion while adding these strokes by keeping the pressure variable. Also notice that I'm going over and in between the darker texture, and it is giving us the required grayish fur. Keep on layering these white strokes of variable length until the full area is covered beautifully. Now moving on to the eye, and I'm layering pastel all over the white portion after analyzing the reference image. Now I'm adding these small dots under this white highlight we just added, and this will make the eye look shiny and 3D in no time. To mimic the thin fur texture, I'm adding these teeny tiny strokes along the ring by flicking my pencil downwards. Now let's move on to the beak, and I'm adding these horizontal strokes using my sharp tip white pastel pencil. I'm moving my hand back and forth while applying a lighter pressure at the start of the stroke and gradually increasing it as I move towards the center. Now again decreasing it as I move towards the right side. In this way, we will achieve a stroke with a brighter center and blended ends. And when the first layer is done, it's time to layer some defined, crisp strokes over and in between them. But this time, I'm keeping the pressure on my pencil relatively higher while adding these strokes to achieve a tone difference between the layers. Now moving on to the front portion of the beak, and it has a blended base. So I'm firstly going along the edge and then shading the required lighter portions. The tip of the beak is brighter, so I'm adding these curved strokes close together by moving my pencil upwards. Now let's add scratches on the beak, which are visible due to the light falling on this specific area. Start sketching the scratches on the sides of the beak and keep on changing the length and direction of the strokes to make them look natural. Apply more pressure in some areas to achieve brighter scratches and use less pressure for the lighter ones. Okay, so moving on to the fur cluster over the beak portion, and I'm adding these individual strokes to make the previous texture look shiny. But the white wasn't turning out as bright as I wanted. So I'm now firstly picking up the charcoal using my Mono 0 eraser. And that's how we will get a clean base for the white texture. Now I'm going over all the directional lines using a sharp tip white pastel pencil. And look how bright these strokes are turning out, just the way we want it. I'm also adding these few smaller strokes right above the longer ones to mimic the exact pattern of the reference image. Moving on to the lower beak, and first of all, I'm picking up the previous charcoal layers from the tip using my Mono 0 eraser. And now layering the white pastel over these lighter portions very carefully. The white fur strokes we just added under the eye portion are bright from the root. So I'm layering a few darker ones in between and over the previous ones. And look how blended and subtle it has started to look. As I'm holding a charcoal pencil right now, so I decided to add a base layer in the rest of the head portion. I'm adding curved strokes by carefully varying the size and direction depending upon the area I'm working on. Add denser strokes side by side where you need a darker base, and increase the distance between the strokes while working on the areas which are relatively brighter and shiny in the reference image. Now let's add highlights and details using a white pastel pencil in this whole portion. And I'm repeating the similar process of adding horizontal strokes as I did for the upper beak portion. When the highlights on the beak are done, it's time to add these intricate strokes to mimic the scratches on the sides and tip of the beak. I'm also brightening up the tip of the beak, and look how small details bring life to the flat surfaces. Okay, so let's start adding lighter fur, and first of all, I'm extending the fur texture which I've added under the eye portion previously. And I'm repeating the similar process of flicking my pencil in one go to add these curved strokes which are needle-like thin from the ends. I'm going over some of these strokes to make them pop up even more. Moving on to the left side, and when we look at the reference image, we can see that these strokes are shorter at the top and gradually increase in size as we move downwards. So I'm adding these strokes by moving my hand back and forth and keeping the length small in the start, and then start gradually increasing it as you move away from the first stroke. Make sure to add these strokes slightly curved to give the area a 3D look. Moving on to this next portion near the beak, and we can see that the fur texture here is a bit different from the previously added texture. So I'm firstly adding these relatively thicker strokes by applying higher pressure on my pencil. Now that the base texture is done, it's time to layer some strokes over it, and I've increased the pressure on my pencil a little bit and adding these highlights in the form of small rectangles of different lengths to mimic such a texture. This will create a texture of small feather tufts just like the reference image. Now to fill the empty space between these two textures we just added, I'm repeating the similar process of adding thin curved strokes just like the way I did for the left side. Make sure to keep the length of these strokes variable and change it according to the area you are working on. Now moving on to the body, and I'll be working on the left half first. I'm adding the darker base layer using my charcoal pencil in all those areas which are darker in the reference image. The texture near the front is in the form of small rhombus shape attached together. So I'm adding these strokes accordingly. And as we move towards the left, the fur is becoming longer without any specific small patterns. So I'm changing the length and direction to mimic the exact shape and flow. Keep on layering these strokes until you achieve the required darker base. Now let's add highlights over the body, and I'm adding these thin strokes as I did earlier by moving my hand back and forth. I'm also keeping the pressure variable while moving my hand to achieve these strokes which are brighter from the center and blended from the ends. And this will create the perfect shine on the black fur. Try adding some strokes with higher pressure and others with lower pressure to achieve different tones that look more realistic and 3D, rather than having one-toned highlights. Now I'm adding these fur near the left edge of the paper with a very light hand to blend the brighter strokes with the darker ones and giving the area a perfect 3D look. Moving on to the body, and I'm repeating the similar process of adding the darker texture first using a charcoal pencil. Make sure to keep the pattern and direction of these fur in mind, as they will serve as base for the lighter ones. And if you mess up with the base texture, then all the future layers will be deformed. When you're done with the base layer, start adding the white fur on all the lighter areas. I'm moving my hand back and forth while adding these strokes, as we want fine ends on both the sides of the strokes. I'm repeating the similar process and adding these strokes over all the fur tufts in the required portion. Make sure to change the length and direction of these strokes, as all the fur tufts are different in sizes. Moving on to the front portion of the body, and we can see that this is almost pitch black with a very subtle shine. So I'm starting from the top and filling the area with these curved strokes very carefully. Keep on increasing the length of the strokes as we move towards the bottom to mimic the texture similar to the reference image. Again, make sure to keep these strokes curved, as these curved strokes will make the body look fluffy and 3D, and the straight strokes will make the area look flat. Okay, so this bottom portion is almost pitch black in the reference image. So I'm filling this small section by keeping the pressure high on my pencil. Now I'm flicking my pencil upwards and extending this texture. This upward movement will make the darker strokes perfectly blend with the fur tufts we have added earlier. I'm also extending some strokes downwards on this right side of the body to give it a more natural look. Moving on to the area under the beak portion, and I'm adding these curved strokes after analyzing the reference image. The fur which is near the beak is shorter in length and gradually increases in size as we move away from it. So I'm adding them accordingly. Okay, so now let's add the highlight just like the way we added earlier. The only difference here is that the highlights are a bit soft and subtle, so I'm keeping the pressure very low on it. I'm adding some fur tufts and some individual strokes to mimic the texture in the reference image. This lower right portion has very bright highlights, so I'm increasing the pressure and adding it accordingly. Now let's remove the paper and we can see the background that was exposed has started to look a bit lighter. So I'm blending it using my finger. And with this last step, we are done with this super easy raven drawing using charcoal pencil. Creating these free tutorials needs a significant amount of time and energy. So if you found this one valuable, please show your support by liking this video. Your support keeps me inspired to bring you more creative content. So thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.